Everything we do is going to be about winning. Okay, we're going to learn to do things the right way, and that's the only way we're going to do them. Because if it doesn't help us, we're not doing it, man. That's just as simple as it gets. Win the Super Bowl.
That's good.
I mean it too. You know, one of the things that the only reason you become a head coach in this league, in my opinion, is to win. That's it. That's the bottom line. If you do it for any other reason, you're wrong.
Hey football fans, welcome to the Washington Command Center. Alright, so my last video about signing Frank Reich blew up a bit. So since we don't play until Monday night, I figured I'd drop this and give everybody something to think about and try to make a more clear case for Frank Reich as OC and other moves that I think could complete the equation to make this a Super Bowl winning team in this new era of Washington football. An era where this proud franchise can once again command respect. And what better way to kick off this new era than subscribing here to the first, the real, the OG Washington Command Center, so you can find your way back to some of the most opinionated and ice-cold calculated takes on all things Washington Commanders. While you're at it, ring that bell, hit that like button. It's free to do, and it means a lot. This video is going to be what I feel is a complete yet simple formula to get this team into Super Bowl contention. I felt very strongly about us being close this year, but I feel like very strategically unfortunate injuries and underwhelming ability in the play calling department completely hamstrung what this team could have been. This video is not me giving up on the season. It's just my prescription to make this team the best it can be going into next season. And you'll excuse me if I am a little jaded with this season. I'm having trouble buying into the any given Sunday or catch fire at the right time mindset after watching the refs completely destroy us in what should have been at least 2 winning efforts this season. This video is a guideline so we can make this team good enough that even the refs can't steal wins from us anymore. Let me preface this by saying I was horrible at math in school, but strangely enough, I'm going to try to break this down in the form of a simple formula, like a lot of football fans view things anyway, even if they don't realize it. I mean, think about it. Matt Stafford plus the Rams equals Super Bowl, or more commonly, Tom Brady plus any team equals Super Bowl. In my opinion, it's actually a lot more like the Rams plus Sean McVay equals Super Bowl appearance, and then McVay's Rams subtract Jared Goff and his contract, plus Stafford, Von Miller, and OBJ equals Super Bowl. Or the Bucs load of offensive talent and key defensive pieces, plus Tom Brady, plus Gronk trade, plus Antonio Brown and Leonard Fournette signings, plus Wirfs and Winfield in the draft equals Super Bowl. The point of that all is it's a team sport and there's a lot of pieces in the equation. I think we currently have most of the pieces in place when it comes to a 53-man roster, but the areas we are lacking just happen to be some of the most impactful. Now, that can be a positive or a negative depending on how you view it. We are either woefully missing the most important parts, so everything else is pointless, or we have everything else in place and all we need is a few things. I think we are just a few moves away, and I think there is a very quick and easy path to them. I'm also not going to dive into the draft. That is a very important part of sustained success, but I'm talking about proven, immediate, elevating type moves that we can make in one offseason that will have immediate impact. Starting out, a high-tier quarterback is widely accepted as the most important piece, and surprisingly, I think we have that. In fact, I think we potentially have two. I know that's going to get a lot of pushback, but I think it's not as simple as a quarterback is good or he isn't. There's a ton of pieces that need to be around him for any quarterback to reach his potential. Play calling being one of the most massive. That's why the biggest piece to this equation, in my opinion, is reuniting Carson Wentz with Frank Reich. They have 3 seasons together, and in my opinion, it's pretty clear they both improve each other. I think Reich's best role is at offensive coordinator and at play caller, and not only do Wentz and Reich elevate each other, but more specifically, Reich's scheme elevates Carson's efficiency, and Carson's talent elevates Reich's scheme. Reich's scheme protects Carson, and Carson's arm opens up Reich's run game. You can see it in their previous seasons together. Even just last season, behind an offensive line possibly worse than what we've had to deal with since week 2, and with a single mid-tier weapon in Michael Pittman, Wentz and Reich got a very efficient 27 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. And it wasn't just the passing touchdown production either. Jonathan Taylor was able to average 106 yards a game behind a horrible offensive line when Wentz was there last year. This year, behind the same line without Wentz, he was only averaging 77 before Reich was fired. Now, that's not a knock against Jonathan Taylor or Reich. Reich's presence has been pretty great on its own in Indy. I mean, Indy's offensive line took a massive leap forward when Reich got the job. Reich left Philly, that was the number 1 ranked offensive line in the league, and he came to Indy, that was the 25th. He drafted Quentin Nelson and Braden Smith, and he took that 25th group all the way up to the 3rd, while Philly dropped 4 spots to the 5th ranked, just with his departure. Yeah, Indy added a great player in Quentin Nelson, but that's a massive leap for a pair of rookie guards to cause on their own, not considering the addition of Frank Reich's scheme. Besides, even though a Wentz-Reich connection is, in my opinion, the most important piece of this equation, it's not like it's the only one I'm going to recommend. I will recommend some help for the offensive line later, but just looking back, comparing what they've done together as opposed to apart, in 2017, they had a great offensive line, but they only had one top-tier playmaker in Zach Ertz, along with some barely serviceable wide receivers, and Frank Reich was able to have Carson on track for a league MVP in only his 2nd season in the NFL. He had 33 touchdowns and only 7 interceptions through just 13 games. Now, Reich's got pretty close to this in his first season in Indy, but still hasn't quite been as efficient. You know, he helped build that 3rd ranked offensive line in Indy, and he had the second coming of Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck going into his 6th season, and he was able to bring Luck within 1 touchdown of his career best numbers with 39 touchdowns. He actually had him throw 1 less interception, but it was still 15 interceptions was considerably more than Wentz had. So a full 16-game season, a prime T.Y. Hilton and Jack Doyle. So comparing the best of Luck in his 6th season versus who's widely considered an elite quarterback versus what Reich and Wentz were able to do in just 13 games in Wentz's 2nd season, and you be the judge. 33 touchdowns to 7 interceptions in 13 games versus 39 touchdowns and 15 interceptions in 16 games. So 6 fewer TDs and less than half the interceptions. They are just better together, Wentz and Reich are. You can see the difference that Reich got from the team in Indy when it was falling apart. You know, people talk about Rivers being better because they made it to the playoffs, but the numbers don't say that. And Rivers had a superior team and a completely different schedule. Carson had to deal with the playoff schedule the following year without Anthony Costanzo, without the last flashes of T.Y. Hilton and Jack Doyle, and only Michael Pittman, whereas Rivers had everything else. Still, Wright got 27 touchdowns and 7 interceptions out of Carson, and only 24 touchdowns and 11 interceptions out of Rivers, and nowhere near 300, at least 300 yards less rushing out of Jonathan Taylor. So I don't see how the comparison is very much in favor of Rivers there. Now, here in Washington, we got to see Carson keep pace with Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes out the gate this year. He had 7 TDs in 2 games before the offensive line completely buckled. So Carson still has the ability to distribute the ball at an elite level. And we aren't talking about having to go all the way back to 2017 to find that kind of play from Carson. We saw it with us early on, and we saw it last season in his efficiency with Reich. As I've said, Reich's play calling protects Carson from the line buckling, like it did to a degree in Indy. If you add our plethora of weapons to that, along with the upgrades to the line I'll be recommending, we should be firmly within the top 5 offenses in the league. So, Commanders plus Reich, I think, would boost that 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions up closer, or even past that 33-7 MVP caliber season he had there. And it's going to boost the run game too. Get us somewhere near that massive 2,500 plus rushing yard team that they had last year in Indy. And it would just make us an all-around better team. But the equation, that part of the equation isn't enough for a Super Bowl win, in my opinion. And there are still moves for us to make outside of that. After that, I think we have some money moves that have to be made. And we're finally going to get into some real math here. First thing out the gate, I think, would be restructuring Wentz's contract. We have $14 million cap space going into next season. With that move alone, it would boost us up to $27.2 million. A nice, comfortable place. And I'm sure the vote of confidence bringing in Reich, along with the fact that restructures just mean you get paid up front as a bonus, I think with that, Carson Wentz would be all for it. Especially since his contract's in a position to be dropped outright if he doesn't. So that would be an easy $27 million that we would hit. After that, we can free up $9.6 million by restructuring Jonathan Allen, which is a safe bet. Pay that man off. He's already playing his ass off. He showed us after being paid that he continues to work his tail off. Go ahead, pay him out. Along with him, you got Leno, who's built up a lot of great will too. We restructure him, we can free up another $5.3 million. Then, if needed, restructuring Logan Thomas could give us a nice $3.4 million cushion. So we'd be easily setting at $45.5 million before a head even hits the chopping block. Speaking of the block, but a different kind, the trade block, I think it should be let known that Kendall Fuller, Chase Roullier, Andrew Norwell, and Bobby McCain are all on the trade block. That way, hopefully we have enough time to possibly get something back for them on their way out. But ultimately, if not, they hit the chopping block to the tune of $17.9 million that we could save. Anybody that wants to push back on Roulier, think about the fact that he's only played 10 games in 2 seasons. There is no time for nostalgia or connection in this Super Bowl equation. So we'd be sitting around $64 million at that point in our cap space. That would give us plenty to re-sign our only on-team big-ticket item in Daron Payne, which, in my opinion, we have to do. But I don't think Payne is quite in the same pay category as Allen, so we'd be lucky in that. And I think the grading supports that he's, pretty well below that. Not by much, but Payne's never broke into the 70s in his grading, now into his 5th season, while Allen's been in the 80s, a top 5 defensive tackle in the league since his 4th season. So I think $15 million would be a generous offer that should keep Payne in town. And it's something that we could easily live with those restructures, with those moves. So, along with him, I think other players we should try to retain, like Cole Holcomb, F.A. Obata, Rashad Walgoose, Daniel Wise, all on defense, and Tyler Larson, who's proven himself to be a nice, cheap backup center. I think all those moves could be done fairly cheaply. And after keeping together the necessary parts of the Commanders plus Reich part of this equation, which, again, like I said, should be considerably south of $25 million, I think making all those restructures and all those cuts would put us firmly in that all-in realm, and I'm all for it. We've built well enough through the draft, and we have enough pieces in place that we could be sitting there with $64 million cap space, and that would give us more than enough to keep the best pieces we have while adding some big ones that we need. And I think it's time to take advantage of the cycle, play the cap game like everyone else is, shoot our shot. We'd have this fresh batch of contracts going into next season, giving us the ability to then restructure them so we could re-sign our own players again. It's a major part of how the game is played by the high-level teams, and it's something we need to start taking advantage of. With that nice amount of cap, it's time to add high-impact talent at free agency. The most impactful free agent signing I think we could make, the one free agent I think we should pull out all the stops for, and the most important of the trio of signings that I'm going to recommend, if we only sign one guy, this should be him. 26-year-old cornerback Jameel Dean, who is a free agent for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this year. He's 6'1", 205 pounds, 4.3 speed in the 40, 41-inch vert. He had a 9.93 RAS, and he's graded in that 76 region when he saw the field in his first 3 seasons as a backup, according to PFF, before breaking out this year as a starter with an elite 83.2 PFF grade. Most importantly to us, this 6'1", 205, 4.3 40 athletic freak that came out of college and played his first couple seasons in the league as mostly a prototypical press man corner has been molded into a beast of a zone coverage. According to PFF, he's the top cornerback when targeted in zone coverage, allowing a measly 32.1 passer rating. He's stepping his ball hawk game up there too. He's usually getting 2 interceptions a season, but he already has 2 so far this season. Tampa Bay's they just paid Carlton Davis $14 million last year. And I'm not sure they're going to be able to make a huge effort to keep Dean. With Tom's contract ending, I don't know if Tom's going to be coming back. That would give the Buccaneers more money, but it also gives young players less reason to want to stick around. Bucs media people were looking at his contract ceiling around what they gave Carlton Davis, 3 years, $35 million, or about $14 million a year. I think he's going to be a big ticket item because his position, his performance, and his size and athleticism profile. But like I said, we have all the ability to make the moves to get the money. And trading away William Jackson III and moving on from Kendall Fuller opens up a lot of funds for us at the cornerback position. And having our other three corners on rookie deals, I think we could go as far as $17 million a year, and that would be a no-brainer. William Jackson III was making $13 million a year. That's gone. Cutting Fuller gives us $8.5. So we'd actually be getting cheaper at the position. With a young quartet of Dean, Ben St. Juste, Wild Goose, and Castro Fields coming back next year. And I'd feel pretty good about that group next season. Especially if we add a first or a second round pick into that mix. So Jamil Dean will be the guy I went for right out of the gate as hard as possible. Let's bring that guy here. But back into the all-in mind state, another huge move that I would love to see us make, we should see if 16 mil is enough to bring Tremaine Edmunds home to the DMV. You know, Edmunds is a guy a lot like Payne. He doesn't show up well from a grading standpoint, but he makes a pretty clear impact on the field. 6'5", 250-pound linebacker, 9.74 RAS score, which is just so rare at the modern linebacker position, especially one that specializes in coverage like he does. 6'5", 250, and that good in coverage. All that size and length moving around as fast or faster than Cole Holcomb. He's a nightmare in the passing lanes with the ability to carry coverage deep down the field. And those long arms are great at plugging even big holes and lassoing in ball carriers. We should have the best chance outside of Buffalo to not have to overpay him too much. You know, his projected market value is $14.2 million. The Buffalo media have quoted a possible 15 mil target. I don't think 16 mil is too much of an overpay, and I think I would love it if we did that. $1 million more to come home and play on a defense with a lot of great young defensive pieces, along with a linebacker head coach and a linebacker defensive coordinator that have showed a bit of their ability to develop young linebackers, with Jamin Davis taking a considerable step up in year 2 and Holcomb making solid improvements since Ron's been here. There's no telling what he could do, what they could do with a young player even more physically gifted than Jamin Davis. You know, that's already went through a lot of the growing pains and gathered a lot of experience. He's already been in the league 5 years, and he's still only going to be 25 going into next season. Our defense is pretty similar to Buffalo's as well, so he should be able to make an easy transition. Adding Jamil Dean and Tremaine Edmunds would really put this defense over the top. After them, the finishing touch of free agency before we move on to two massively important trade targets is a quality kicker in Matt Gay, who is only 27, which is a baby as far as kickers go, and the prize of the free agency kicker market. He's been ascending over the last 2 seasons. He would give us the type of confidence to make the guaranteed points that you need to win the tough games. He's got a projected market value of $5 million a year, which is pretty high for a kicker, but it'd be fine because, he'd be the last of 3 free agent signings. So, well within reason there. Take that, secure the position so we don't have to be on the edge of our seats when it comes to kicking anything over a 30-yard field goal. That sends us into the draft, free to target some high-value, high-potential players, or move back and pick up assets since we won't be hurting for anything in particular. Anything we grab would just be gravy at that point. We could grab a finishing touch like a return man or a player to develop for the future. But I've been droning on about free agents long enough. I'm not going to get into the draft this video, like I said. Let me get to the final and very important part of this equation. 2 trades that I think would secure this offensive line for years to come. Since I recommended cutting 2 of an already weak interior offensive line in Roulier and Norwell, you're probably wondering what would happen here. First off, I think Sadiq Charles or Chris Paul could do really well stepping into left guard in Reich's system. They're both pretty agile and athletic, but worst comes to worst, if they couldn't get it going in the scheme, we can do what people have been calling for, move Lucas to right tackle and move Cosme into offensive guard there, which I think he would do even better in Reich's scheme if we had to do that. Or we could just put a real top-tier right guard next to him like he had with Sheriff and boost that right side up as good as it was last year. And that guy, I believe, would be Tevin Jenkins from the Chicago Bears. He's that dude. I talked about him at length in my trade deadline moves video, so you could check that out there. But long story short, Bears expressed a desire to move him before this season, so that door is open. He's 6'6", 321 pounds, former second-round pick. He'll be 25 going into next season with 2 years left of his rookie deal, making him considerably cheaper than re-signing Schweitzer would be. Schweitzer's projected by SpyTrack to cost $13.8 million next year. Yikes. Not interested in that, especially after the injuries. I think Tevin Jenkins' trade would be the way to go. His 9.74 RAS and his 78.8 PFF grade this season and his first full season as a starter show the kind of potential he has over Wes. This guy was my pick for the perfect replacement for Brandon Sheriff in that draft. We can get him for 2 more years on the cheap while he's ascending into what I believe will be a top 10, probably top 5 offensive guard in the league soon. Especially if he finds himself here in a Frank Reich scheme. I mean, you can watch Justin Fields highlights and you'll see there's a lot of 76 highlights in there too. Number 76, Tevin Jenkins, holding back defensive linemen, like one with each hand, stonewalling 2 stunting players, pulling across the line, sealing, knocking guys out of their socks, getting to the second level, holding beautiful blocks on sweeps. The guy's got so much talent and so much ability already. Lucky for us, with things as they stand in Chicago, I'm pretty sure this trade can still get done very cheaply. Stealing an awesome player for a 3rd and a 7th, probably. Like, we have a 3rd round comp pick for Sheriff and a 7th for Settle. I would be all for sending them for him. Even if we had to reimburse their 2nd rounder, which I think is unlikely with 2 years gone from his contract, and their tumultuous past giving him, like, no leverage, I think it would even be worth it then. This guy should be a top target as a trade. I think we should be calling to see about him. I think he'd be a massive upgrade at the position. And when you look at the complete package, the youth, the price, the talent, and the performance, we aren't going to find a guy like him with any of those picks. Even in the second round, it'd be very hard to find a player that would be as sure a bet as him. So I think that needs to get done. Tevin and Sam Cosmi would make for a deadly duo together on the right side. Or if Cosmi kicks inside, either way, they'll be insane together if, we get that Frank Reich scheme I'm talking about. Or even if we don't, they'll make a deadly duo. After him, we got to replace Roulier with somebody. And there just so happens to be another young, underappreciated interior offensive lineman on a team that needs a lot of help in other places that I talked about in my trade deadline video. And just like Jenkins, I think it's just as smart to trade for him this offseason than it would have been at the deadline. He'll probably be cheaper now. So we might be looking at our third for Jenkins and maybe our fourth for this guy to completely bring this offensive line up to snuff. And that guy is Matt Hennessy. Now, he graded a 77.1 through 988 snaps last year in his second season in the league. And so far, through only 50 snaps as a backup, has graded at a 79.7 this year. This guy should be a starter. And just like Jenkins, he's young and ascending with mobility, agility, and athleticism. He's perfect to fit Frank Reich's scheme. And very solid RAS score of 8.89. He only has 1 year left on his contract after this season. So he's a 1 year rental. So a former third rounder I think would cost a fourth at worst. But with only that 1 year on his contract, we might be looking at a fifth or a sixth to land him and get our foot in the door. He hasn't had a chance to build up that value, which would give us a good chance to re-sign him at a cheaper price. Especially, like I said, trading for him, getting that goodwill in, he'd probably, agree to something reasonable for us. If not, we get him for the year and we go to the Super Bowl. So that's the final piece to the equation, to the formula. And it might look a little complex, but it's something we've seen done plenty of times before by other teams. It's something we can do. We got enough in place to make this all add up. Washington plus Reich plus restructures plus resignings plus trades plus free agents equals Super Bowl. It doesn't even require getting lucky in the draft or anything else crazy. A recently fired head coach going back to the position he won a Super Bowl at with the quarterback that got him most of the way there, building them with by far the best situation they've ever had, adding 2 quality interior offensive linemen, and then signing those 3 finishing pieces, 2 of them to the defense. So that's my idea of the winning formula. It's not the only one, and I know people will say Ron's on his way out or that Dan is, so that things are going to change. But as it stands, I think it's a surefire way to bring us back to the promised land in this new era of Washington football, an era where this proud franchise can once again command respect. There's no better way to kick off this new era than subscribing here to the Washington Command Center, so you can find your way back to some of the most opinionated and ice-cold calculated takes on all things Washington Commanders. Remember to hit that like button, ring that bell, and if you listen this long, I love y'all. Peace.